Hello and welcome back to the Someone Else Show, an attempt at a conservative podcast hosted not by a political pundit nor a DC insider, but by someone else, a normal person, myself. And we begin episode 10 here with a story that would have made the cut for yesterday's episode, but it didn't because of those three stories I went over yesterday being more dominant in the news, broadly speaking. So the thing that slipped under the radar was that while South Korea had the whole martial law fiasco, the French government, around the same time, had stalled up basically and had essentially just ceased functioning. So what happened was earlier in the week on Monday, the Prime Minister of France forced a Social Security financing bill through without a vote in the French government, and this then led to a kind of standoff between the left and the right in France over next year's austerity budget. And so what happened eventually was, right, they were both kind of fed up with what the Prime Minister had done. They were both kind of going back and forth about it, and both sides actually kind of separately presented their own motions to call for the French Parliament to conduct a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister's government. So eventually, one was held, and out of the 577 MPs in France, 331 voted in favor of the vote of no confidence. The minimum for the vote of no confidence to pass was 288, so by about 50, or just shy of 50 votes was the margin that it passed. And this was actually the first successful non-confidence vote to oust a prime minister in France since 1962. So how did this kind of go down? Well, actually, everyone kind of see it coming from a mile away is the thing, right? Because during the French elections, what was the narrative, right? What was the, not narrative, but like the story going around was that the right in France under Marine Le Pen was set to win the government pretty handedly up until the last minute, when out of like a kind of desperation move, a coalition was formed between like the more middle-ish left, like centrist middle left. That's where the French president Emmanuel Macron kind of sits, and also another portion of the left, the far right, from like the middle to the far left. Right, there's a whole other party, because the way these things kind of break down is you have like a far left party, a middle left party, and then a middle right party, and then a far left party, typically in these European countries. So, but in France, the right was more broadly one thing. There wasn't really much of a divide between the right and some sort of far right. There's just the right in France. There's not that kind of separation. But in France, there was this separation between just kind of the more standard left and the far left, and those two, seeing that this broader right was going to win, they decided to form that coalition, right, to their natural opposition for both of them being the right. So the government of France, after that, had basically essentially been in a stalemate the whole time. Probably hence why the prime minister forced the Social Security legislation through without a vote, because again, that agreement, the coalition was so, between the far left and the left, was so tenuous that they started to disagree on stuff. So those two couldn't come together to actually form a functional majority. And then meanwhile, you have the rest of the French Parliament, right included, right, and there's some centrists in there as well, who were also kind of going at it from the other angle. So there was not enough consensus anywhere to get anything going, right? So that's why that Social Security legislation was forced through with no vote by the Prime Minister. Hence why most of the legislative body there, right, most of the PMs got kind of upset about it. They were being passed by, right, as a branch of government, and voted this no vote of confidence. Now, of course, after the vote of no confidence passed, the prime minister was constitutionally under the French Constitution. Right? He was obligated to resign, which leaves the hands of the French government. It leaves the French government in the hands of the president Emmanuel Macron. Now, the problem is most of the PMs in the country don't want Macron either, right? They also don't like him. So again, remember, we got here because let's say 45, I don't really remember what the exact percentages were, but let's say like a 45 to 48% of the country was just part of this broad group on the right. Right? Then you had Macron's like middle left, center left party, and then you had the far left. So you had the far left attacking Macron, right, from Macron's left, and you had the right attacking Macron from the right. And so they formed that coalition. The coalition can't hold together. So now that Macron is going to be the one interimly in charge of the government with the prime minister stepping down, you still have the left, the far left, attacking Macron again from his left, and again the right naturally being in opposition to Macron as well. So there's still this majority that's still also against Macron. All right? So you have people like Mathilde Penot, head of the parliamentary faction of the left party, La France Insoumise, saying, quote, "We are now calling on Macron to go," and Eric Coquerel, another leftist MP, said that the motion to oust the prime minister sounded the death knell of Emmanuel Macron's mandate. The French president was today an obstacle and in no way a solution. Today we are voting to overthrow your government, but more than anything else, we are sounding the death knell for a mandate, that of the president. And now, of course, after this, Macron, for his part, rejected calls calling for his resignation, saying that the idea was a political fiction. So I don't know what he thinks he can even do. He's trapped on both sides. He's between a rock and a hard place. And this is, again, his own fault for forming that coalition that everyone saw a mile away was going to fall apart, and then he would be stuck between this rock and the hard place. All right? Because you saw your more natural opposition, being the right, was poised to win the French election, and then you and your party decided to do like the old, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend at the last moment, with the far left that was also gunning for you. So you chose the lesser of two enemies, and now you're stuck between both of them, and you have nowhere to go, right? I don't know what he thinks he's going to actually be able to accomplish, right? It's like in the U.S. when you have, a president of one party, and then one of the Senate or the House or both are controlled by the other party. You're going to get nothing done. Like It's a right. Neither the legislative branch will be able to get anything done, nor the executive branch will be able to get anything done in that scenario. Like, no one's going to get anything done here, right? And from the looks of it, you seem to be the sort of odd one out, Macron, right? You seem to be in the very, and not very, but in the decently small, comparatively speaking, minority on this one. Like, you seem to be the linchpin that's in the way here. So, like, the only thing that can happen is, I believe, they're calling for like more snap elections, which is what the last one was. So they're calling for more like snap elections to have Macron step out and get replaced for the remainder of his 2-year term. Or the last 2 years remaining of his term, I should say. But the whole thing is basically just going up in flames is the point. And everyone kind of see it a mile away when you formed this shaky coalition to begin with. Now, speaking of flames in France, Notre Dame Cathedral, right, went up in flames 5 years ago. It reopened last night, and it was basically what you would expect. It was mainly a political dignitary gathering event. Like, it was very ceremonial, and a bunch of world leaders were there to attend, and it was just that kind of event. Just a dignitary meet and greet, essentially. Trump was there along with President Macron. Zelensky was there. Prince William was there. Even Elon was there. The vaunted head of the American Doge. Truly international diplomacy type role, if I've ever seen one. Really international fair kind of stuff. The Doge. That's sarcasm, by the way, in case we need to clear that up. He was probably just more so there because he could be there. And honestly, like, why not go if you have the chance? You can't really blame him for doing it, for going. He can't hold it again. Like, did you have a chance to go see Notre Dame? Like, do it. Cool, whatever. Anyways, the whole thing was more or less ceremonial. Some things that were still, for the most part, seemingly, I think, ceremonial, but still had some real purposes still entangled in them, were things that just kind of happened since all these people and dignitaries were in the same place at the same time anyways. Trump actually met with Prince William. He did a meeting with Prince William, then also did another separate meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine, hosted by the French President Emmanuel Macron. Meanwhile, at the same time this week, Joe Biden has been in Africa, or after pardoning his son Hunter, he immediately got on a plane, essentially on Monday, and just left to go to Angola to attend a summit with various leaders of African nations there. Apparently, just falling asleep, or at the very least, really resting his eyes and not giving one single fuck about being there at all. And here's what that looked like. Right, here he is. Right, he's dozing off, or he's really trying to get high, trying to smoke what appears to be like a Sharpie pen, like it's one of Hunter Biden's crack pipes or whatever. Like he's really trying to get a good hit off of that Sharpie. So he just looks out of it. Like, and here he is, right? He's just lights out, or he's not giving a single damn. Right, he's either really falling asleep, dozing off, really resting his eyes, or he just does not give a damn. Like, and if he is falling asleep, it either takes a serious amount of or a serious lack of willpower to fall asleep in like that kind of position and chair. So it's either he's old and he's cooked, or he knows his career in politics is done, so why bother trying anyways? Right, that's really where he's at right there. Now, what came out of this visit to Africa? On Tuesday, Biden announced $1 billion in humanitarian aid to support Africans displaced by historic level droughts and food insecurity. Because it's not like there are people in his own country who are still trying to recover from a hurricane or something. It's not like that's going on. And now, I know that $1 billion is literally a fraction of a percent of the annual U.S. budget, as I've kind of gone over when I explained like a couple episodes ago with Ukraine and sending money to Ukraine. I explained how much, I believe it was $33 billion a year we were averaging, how much of a percent of the U.S. government budget that was, and it was literally, marginal, and $1 billion is even less than that, so it's even more fractional and marginal, so it's like, who cares? But it's not so much how devastating sending $1 billion is. It's more so the principle of the matter, right? Because the thing that we need to do, and that everyone probably agrees is an issue here, is that the U.S. government needs to manage its own money, right? Like, that's the whole point of why Trump is bringing in, in creating the Department of Government Efficiency, right, the Doge with Elon and Vivek, is because, right, what we need to do is we need to figure out our own budget first, right? We need to figure out what we're doing with our own money first, right? There's a saying that kind of goes something like, you can't help others when you can't even help yourself, or something like that. Like, it's literally Like think of this situation like just normal individual finance. First, you need to manage your own budget, which the U.S. currently isn't doing. Right, we're in debt like $30+ trillion, and every year we're spending more than we take in. Right, and the outgoing money, the spending more, included in that is sending out aid packages, as small as they may be. You have, when you're trying to manage a budget, you got to account for every single fraction of a percent, or every single penny, right? You have to account for every single one if you're going to figure out how to manage your own budget. Right? You have to live within your own means, and so first, before we send out aid, the government has to first, right, figure out how to spend less than it takes in, right? Which means living within their own means, and then also there's also this accrued debt that we have, which means that any money that you save from living within your own means now has to be put towards getting out of that debt as quickly as possible. Forget sending out the aid at this point, right? Right. Only eventually, when the U.S. here, the government, right, figures out its own financial woes and gets out of debt, and then finally has money lying around, right? Some of it, first off, should be invested in some way to kind of prevent this kind of thing from happening again with going into debt and whatnot, right? Kind of having an investment fund for like security, financial security. And then the rest of it, we can do things like this, sending out aid packages to places like Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, wherever. But that's a future thing. Right now, we need to solve our own problem before we can solve everyone else's problem, is the point I'm trying to make. All right. Now, moving on, we actually have another story that is about governments breaking down, which is in the wee hours of Sunday morning, local time, I believe, Sunday morning, in Syria, rebel forces backed by Turkey took the capital city of Damascus in Syria, and the Assad family, which has been ruling the country for like 50 years, was ousted, and Bashar al-Assad, who was the ruler of Syria, has now fled to one of his allies, that being Russia, right, and seeking and getting asylum there from the Russians. Now, the Assad family in Syria was a proxy of both the Russians and Iran. It was one of Iran's several proxies in the region, of several of which also aren't doing so well. The other ones not doing so hot are Hamas and Hezbollah. So what this basically means is Iran is really losing grip on whatever control it might have had over the Middle East. Now, what happens next in Syria specifically is anyone's guess, really, because the whole thing is kind of just a toss-up mess. One far-off possibility is Russia and Iran might help to try and get Assad back into the country, to retake the country, although, again, that probably won't really happen, because the whole reason this even began is because, again, Assad was a proxy of Iran and Russia. Russia is currently bogged down, militarily speaking, with this debacle of the war of Ukraine. Remember, Russia's doing so badly there that they're actually getting munitions and extra manpower from North Korea. So forget spending extra resources to help get Assad back into Syria. And also, Iran has been significantly weakened from losing the war with Israel, that has been fighting with Israel via its own proxies, right? Hezbollah and Hamas, and also there's like the Houthis in Yemen. So Iran has been depleted as well, and also Israel has launched some retaliatory strikes into Iran itself, and Iran's kind of on the chopping block next after Hezbollah and Hamas. So maybe Syria just kind of remains in chaos as it tries to figure out what to do, internally speaking, or maybe there's the weird off chance that it goes smoothly. And but the only thing that is known is that most countries, like the U.S., right, Russia and Iran are ruled out because they just physically can't. But other countries like the U.S., right, both Trump and Biden have actually taken a stance of saying they're going to just be non-involved in any of this going on, and they'll just leave Syria and that region to its own devices and let it settle it out on its own. So who knows how it ends up going? But at least it's a different strategy to approaching the Middle East. That for once doesn't involve sending our own military into one of these countries in the region, and then I'm going to say, hopefully, by some weird, statistical outlier miracle, that it somehow just happens to work out, and then finally, all these Syrian refugees who came over into other places of the world, like Europe, you had like 12 million refugees as a result of the over decades-long civil war. You can get them back into their country, or get them. Hopefully, they'll be able to return home and live, in their native land in peace. They get to go home, live peacefully. Especially now that the country is run by the former commander of Al Qaeda, Mohammed Al Jalani. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound very good at all, actually. Well, so much for all that. Anything good coming out of this. All that happened was really just exchanged one evil for another, which is like the most Middle East thing imaginable. It's like, at some point, Middle East as a region, you guys are going to have to stop doing this revolving door thing of getting people in charge who aren't exactly going to be good for you, and then replacing them with more people who aren't going to be good for you over and over again, if you want the chaos of this region to ever end. Like, at some point you're going to have to do that. And now you're going to have to do it on your own. This responsibility is going to fall on you as a region, because again, the rest of the world either can't, Russia and Iran can't, or the West, like the US, aren't going to try and attempt to do some sort of savior move, due to the amount of times that they have tried it in the past with some sort of wacky plan that backfired horribly, right? And then to make matters worse, just like in France, where Macron formed this weird coalition, then broke down this tenuous alliance, fell apart, and then there was infighting. This rebel group that took over Syria and took over the capital Damascus was also its own kind of coalition, so they might start infighting amongst themselves once the high of victory wears off, and because they were all unified against Assad, but now that there's no Assad, they're all going to fight for power. But then there's also other smaller factions in the country who also control parts of Syria still, who will also be fighting both amongst themselves still, and also against the rebels that took over Damascus, if the rebels in Damascus aren't also already fighting amongst themselves. So that's also another mess that took place. And then now for one more quick story. Germany, speaking of messes actually, Germany apparently has adopted the same idiot standards that we've gone over in the UK, right? So Germany, a judge in Germany sent a 20-year-old girl to a juvenile detention center, because they, you still consider someone under 21 juvenile in Germany, right? I guess like here in the US it's 18. You're under 18, you go to juvie. If you're over 18, or you are 18 and over, you go to adult systems. If you're under 21, I guess would be the age I'm going to assume here. If you're under 21, you go to juvie. If you're 21 or over, you go to the adult system. So, anyways, the judge sent a 20-year-old girl to a juvenile detention center for 48 hours for the horrendous crime of sending online insults to a gang rapist. Right? Messages, right? These are the messages labeling him a, quote, dishonorable rapist pig and a disgusting freak. Just, unfathomable things to say to a gang rapist. And so the judge found that she was guilty of a hate crime. Now, I guess technically in some way it is a hate crime. What reasonable person doesn't hate rapists? So, and you hate the rapists, so I guess there is technically, you hate them. But since when is it a crime to hate a terrible person? They're a rapist. You can hate them. It's okay to hate them. It should be encouraged that you hate rapists. That's what I think here. And like think right, the kind of logic this is you said a mean thing about a bad person, and now Germany, you're Germany, you're Germany, you're Germany. So let me use this seemingly inevitable example, using the same logic that this judge just applied, which means that if someone had said a mean thing about Hitler, you would have also sent them to you would have also punished them, sent them to a juvenile detention center for 48 hours. Right? Same logic, same logic. You can't say bad things about an egregiously bad person. Hitler was an egregiously bad person in Germany. Same logic. So good job, you idiot, you German fuck. And people wonder how Nazis came into power in Germany. But when you're this stupid, I guess, things happen, don't they? And so society has this problem where people, who aren't doing anything wrong are out there getting punished for it, right? You see this in the UK, right? You see people just saying like, I don't like that this kind of, violent people are coming in and doing all this stuff, and then they get for posting it on social media, they get arrested. And now they're doing the same thing in Germany. And it's just going on and on and on all over the place. All right, and they're doing nothing wrong, but they're getting punished for it. Now, I know we were all taught from a young age, right, the kind of adage of if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything, or whatever, however the phrase goes. So it goes something like that. Right, so that's basically to teach the child don't go around saying mean things for no reason. But it's like the way that you're wording it is kind of a dumb way to put it, right? It should be if you don't have a reason to say something bad about someone, then don't go around saying mean things about them. But if there is a good reason, like let's say they're a rapist, then you can go around saying mean things about them. It's pretty justified, right? But somehow society has been regressing to the point that this type of honestly not so nuanced nuance is too complex for the ever getting stupider population. So eventually it's just been dissolving like this into just blanket categorizations. Now it's just say mean word bad. But most of the time, these people who go with this kind of approach, right, only have it be a one-way street where you can't say anything bad about something or someone that they like, but anyone or anything that they like can say anything irrationally dumb, naive, rude, shallow, or whatever against someone or something that they don't like, right? Right. So if you're on one side of an argument, right, you're gonna allow anyone who's on your side of the argument to say any type of stupid, dumb, naive, mean, rude, shallow, inflammatory, whatever thing against the other side of the argument because they're on your side. But if the other side tries to do the same thing back, nope, that's just, you can't have that happen. Right, that's unacceptable. So they always try to make this a one-way street. Right, and they always kind of try and do this where they just go with like, a lot of times it's they have it be like bold or inflated or like contorted, misconstrued, untrue claims that they want, right? And they kind of deliver it as if there's some sort of political genius or social savant or moral exemplar, when in reality they are an idiot who either doesn't know what they're talking about, or and just blindly speak, and are so dumb that they just misconstrued things accidentally, or maybe even they're dumb enough to think that the things that they're misconstruing and the way that they're misconstruing and contorting them, right, and contorting the reality of the situation, the way that they're misconstruing it is actually a visionary type of take. And most of the time, without even looking at the facts or the reality of anything that they're talking about, and just even making up their own reality to both lie to themselves to kind of justify it and also others. All right, and for most of the time, right, for common idiots leaving posts online, it's just better to not even acknowledge them 99% of the time. Just keep going. Maybe you leave them unmuted or whatever because there's some sort of entertainment worth to seeing such a stupid take. But if it's just a pure bland unintellectual trash thing being put out there, you just mute them and you don't even acknowledge them. You just move on. You don't ever have to see that drivel again, and that's the end of it. But unfortunately, there's people like this German judge who get into positions of power, either in law as they are a judge or in politics, who then go around spreading and enforcing their stupidity onto others. And so, then you have, stories like this, and you have to, as a society, speak out against them, right, to kind of get them out of office, right? There is some controversy going on in Germany over this ruling. And of course, you do this civically, and you don't go around trying to do it violently, as so often the left tends to choose. Now, I don't know if this judge was on the left or on the right. I would assume they're on the left, at least by American standards. But anyways, they choose, the left chooses to do violence all the time, right? So you don't want to do it like that. You don't want to do it like them. You want to do it peacefully, right? And, you address anyone with any type of power whom you don't like peacefully, and you try and get them out of office, right? That's the approach that should be taken here, right? That's what we're going to hope for. So hopefully this judge loses that position of power and has to go find employment at a more suitable job, like a circus or something, because they're an absolute clown. And that's actually going to be all the other breaking news stories that weren't breaking enough to make it into yesterday's episode. So we finally gone over them, which means we can end this episode here, and we'll be back next week on Saturday with episode 11. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.